veteran here. You've been kind of walking the halls of Beacon Hills for quite some time now. What have you learned? What have you learned about how important the show is to people? What sense do you get of why people love Teen Wolf so much?
Well, I think what Jeff said, just to add on to that, that when we read the pilot script, Twilight was in its last movie, and
we were the Twilight ripoff.
Yeah, we were the Twilight ripoff at first, and I always laughed because around that time, just prior to that, there was a Democratic election going on about who the candidate would be, and there was a guy named Dennis Kucinich who wasn't invited to the Democratic convention. We stood outside. He's like, one by one, I will gain fans. And in the very beginning, we were this little engine that could, and scripted was so new. So we very much, I felt like we pioneered the way, in a sense, that since Undressed and quite a few years prior, we were one of the first.
I remember watching Undressed.
Right?
I was in college when Undressed was out, and I thought it was legendary. We all watched it.
It was, yeah, that's softcore pornography.
Anyone remember Undressed?
Yeah. There you go.
It was awesome.
Yeah, but back to the authenticity of Teen Wolf.
Yeah.
I just knew something was in that pilot that we all felt, and it had nothing to do with being supernatural. It was that at the heart of it was this incredible metaphor about a guy going through puberty, and how does he deal with not being the most liked or the most talented, and how are you still special amidst averageism? And it really came down to the fact that he wasn't a werewolf. It was the heart that he had as a human, and being a werewolf just created this little microcosm where he was able to propel that in greater strengths.
I remember when I was writing the pilot, I was trying to think, what did I feel when I was a sophomore in high school? And part of it was just the desire to be noticed. And if you look back at the pilot, Scott and Styles don't want to be the most popular in the school. They just want a moment. They just want a moment in the spotlight. They just want to feel special for one moment. And I was very concerned about not having like the cliques in Teen Wolf, not having the popular crowd, the stoner crowd, the sports crowd, and that we kind of stay away from that. But that there's this feeling of when you're a high school student, you want to feel special, even for just a moment, and that's what we tried to do. And Holland did that great in the pilot too, because she's that girl who stands up and yells, and I remember that one moment where you stood up on the bleachers in the pilot and you yelled and you flipped your hair to the side, and I was like, oh my God, she's perfect.
It's interesting to talk about Lydia in the first season, because she started out as sort of the only one in the Corps who didn't seem to be supernatural at all. She just seemed to be the normal girl. And I think that helps you kind of ground her in reality. But then have you found, Holland, that as Lydia becomes more and more of this supernatural being, are you relating to her even more? I mean, tell me about that foundation of grounding her in a realistic world before kind of piling on those layers of Banshee, crazy.
Right. How I saw the character was, she wasn't necessarily the mean girl per se. She might have been sort of portrayed as the mean girl, but in reality it was the fact that she had these guards up, and every time she has a new person around her, like when Kira came in, the guard goes back up. And the more she discovers her supernatural power, the more comfortable she feels with her friends. And there's this direct, correlation to the more she finds out about herself, the more comfortable she is with herself. And letting her guard down around people like Styles and Scott, they've become a real friend. So you've gotten to see that evolution of her becoming more human. Ironically, the more supernatural she becomes.
Interesting. I like that. I like that a lot. And now, Dylan, how's it going? Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well.
So I should say Dylan is an actual teenager.
Well, this is my this is legit.
Years ago.
Dylan, I think you're the youngest on the panel, which is awesome. I love to embrace it.
Yes, Dylan has more facial hair than I could grow now at 39.
What are your friends watching? What are they saying about MTV and about the show you're on or the shows you're not on? What do they want out of TV? Do they want an escape, or do they want a mirror? I know that's kind of a deep...
It's a deep question. I think everyone's different, Everyone wants to see a different thing, which is kind of cool. What MTV is doing is they're giving different aspects. We have the fantasy shows and then the real life shows, and they all have like a human aspect, but everyone's kind of getting their their taste buds.
What did you know about Teen Wolf prior to joining?
I knew that it was
I can tell a story. He actually auditioned for the show.
Oh, yeah,
for another
yeah.
role.
Oh, really? In the pilot?
No, for episode 308, he auditioned for young Derek, and he was phenomenal. But he wasn't. He was a little too young for the part. And it's. I remembered writing his manager an email and saying, just tell Dylan the only reason was because he was too young, and he was a phenomenal actor, and we would definitely have him come back for something else, and now he's back.
Yeah.
I could see a young Tyler in there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Especially I had like long wavy hair. It was pretty.
Yes.
Now, Mina, where does Teen Wolf sort of fit in with this sort of overall? I'm going to come to you for like overarching questions. Where does Teen Wolf fit in? Because it is the only supernatural show of its kind on MTV. It's certainly the only. Not for long, but tell me kind of where. I mean, is there interest in building a supernatural block?
I'm